Hi Mansfield, I like to talk about politics, and the winner for the poll for the next Tory leadership candidate to discuss was Jeremy Hunt. He is the former Health Secretary and current Foreign Secretary who has just come second in the first round of voting for the next Conservative Party leader. A guy who is presenting himself as the sensible candidate, perhaps even the intelligent candidate. The guy who didn't know the nationality of his own wife. He once described his wife as Japanese. Problem is, she's Chinese. An odd part of his pitch to become the next Prime Minister was his supposed success as Health Secretary. So just how successful was he? Well, he did so much to help medical professionals that his tenure saw the very first strike in history of junior doctors. Waiting lists massively increased due to a huge squeeze placed on the sector. He had the nerve to suggest funding had increased when it had actually been reduced. The figures were fiddled by having money from social care applied to the NHS budget, but then saying that the NHS would have to do all that work that the social care were doing for that money. That was their previous responsibility. And who thinks they were given enough money to do it? No, of course they were not. So they not only had the funds to not carry out their own sort of work, but they were given extra responsibilities and a shortfall of funding as well. So to have the gall to say funding has increased when effectively they've increased the deficit even more was... But, you know, those are the sort of economic lies and fiddling of the books that he would pursue as Prime Minister. But I have to say, it's not like he would be alone amongst the more realistic candidates on that front. So I'm personally not sure that he really should be drawing attention to his ministerial career, unless he'd like to point out that at least as Foreign Secretary, unlike Boris Johnson, he has never actually landed a British citizen in an Iranian jail. Hunt's main gambit to become the next leader is to pitch himself as I say, the serious candidate. Contrasted with Boris the buffoon, he's claiming that he is the best place to negotiate Brexit due to his experience on being involved in the London Olympics. It's probably, admittedly, a more complex task than Johnson has ever carried out, but as many Conservative Party members have been told that Brexit is easy, then I don't know how a background of complex projects help. And also, how much can we believe that Jeremy Hunt was actually in charge of the complexities of that project when he can't even understand the nationality of his own wife? It is one of the simpler things that people are expected to do in life, to know your own wife or husband or whoever. As far as Brexit supporting Tories are concerned, Brexit is entirely about political will and nothing else. From their point of view, there are no problems to solve, complex or otherwise. They think we can just exit at the end of October and it will sort itself out. The problem with Jeremy Hunt, as I see it, is that his pitch is supposedly appealing to the sensible, well-informed people, but it isn't sensible, well-informed people who are voting for the next leader. And if it were, I think they'd have a few queries about Jeremy Hunt himself. So I don't think he even appeals to the sensible, well-informed people. So Hunt has said that the party must deliver Brexit before a general election, something that certainly meets the approval of realistic and unicorn-chasing Tories alike, but seemingly forgetting that it is not in the power of a new Prime Minister to avoid a general election if they try to deliver Brexit without Parliament's approval. And that approval is not forthcoming. The elephant in the room that none of the major contenders are acknowledging is that there is no Brexit deal that Parliament will vote for, and any attempt at no deal will trigger the fall of the Conservative government. Like many Conservatives, he says that his party cannot win power in a general election whilst we are still part of the EU, and he's even voiced concerns about the party even existing for the foreseeable future unless the matter is dealt with urgently. But what is missing, as with so many of his other colleagues, is any plan for dealing with it. Even those suggesting a renegotiation, which the EU have said no to, they're not proposing an alternative. What is their plan? What would their negotiation strategy be? They're not saying so. They've not said how it would be acceptable to other EU members. But where his Brexit strategy, if we can call it that, does have more scope is that he is not tying himself to leaving by the end of October. In fact, he is strongly pushing the notion that the Conservatives will be destroyed in a general election. And I believe the word he used was annihilated, and that there definitely would be a general election very soon after Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister. That's the argument he's got to push. That's the argument he is trying to push in terms of getting Tory party members to back him. Personally, I'd say it's the only argument that might give potential Boris Johnson voters pause for thought. Johnson's promise of tax cuts for people on higher income may appeal to the greed of Tory party members, but if they're persuaded that his election would lead to a general election, then they'll be thinking of a possible Jeremy Corbyn government. How realistic that is doesn't really matter, the fact that it could happen. And I can tell you one thing that they already know. Corbyn is not going to be supplying tax breaks for the rich. So if Hunt can keep drawing attention to the parliamentary numbers and how there are more than half of MPs who will vote against Boris Johnson if in a confidence motion, if he does what he says he's going to do, that's not a difficult argument to make either. Then he has a chance. After all, Hunt is still saying that he needs to take us out of the EU quickly, just not as quickly as this year. He also has much more ministerial experience, and although he's been terrifying as a minister from my point of view, he hasn't made the sort of blunders that Boris Johnson or Michael Gove have in cabinet. He may even, indeed, be seen as someone who will secure Brexit without risking the future of the party. But he has a lot of persuading to do, and maybe only a month to do it. Now, in terms of his domestic voting record, he votes as you might expect any right-wing Conservative MP to vote. He's voted for fewer MPs in the Commons, but against reducing the proportion of hereditary peers in the Lords. He votes against public spending on any form of welfare, but thinks we can afford to spend billions on constantly replacing nuclear weapons with the latest shiny ones, weapons that we hope never to use. His voting has almost always been in line with the Conservative leadership, something he will no doubt pitch as part of the loyal party members' cutout. But just as with his attempt to plug his ability to deal with complex projects, I do also think that'll probably fall down as well, because it seems to me that people in the party want a rebel as a leader, not a disciplined soldier anymore. But anyway, there's Jeremy Hunt. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.